you feel like the transatlantic slave trade has affected Black people psychologically?
Oh man, it's affected us so extensively that we don't even realize to what extent. You know, like quick example, half of the people who are Black in America have had some type of experience of being told to come in the house by the time the street lights come on. Right? It's a trend that we've all experienced, and we're like, oh, we all have the same life. But the reality is that there were places that Black people couldn't go once the sun went down, or they would be killed. And so this wasn't just a trend that was common, a common rule. This was a safety survival skill that our parents taught us when we were young as a result of racism, which was built with enslavement. I mean, racism didn't have the leg to stand on as well as it did when the economy benefited from enslavement. And enslavement built the economy, it built property, it built assets for people who were white European. And that type of power and that type of monetary gain is what has perpetuated all of the systems that have been designed to benefit people who are white and disenfranchise people who are Black. So, and anybody who is not considered white. And so when we look at the whole system of enslavement and how it built economy and how it built government standards and how it built so many and shaped so many things, and how then the government started to reflect aspects of enslavement or rules that maintain aspects of enslavement. And then how does that impact us? How does that impact our experiences? And then from our experiences, then that shapes how we think about things. And so, I think about our identity. Enslavement impacted our identity in a way of us not really knowing who we are, not knowing where we came from. Records were destroyed, so we don't have access to what tribe that we originated from, and then when we don't have these answers, then we don't have things to hold on to, because we were rebuked for holding on to certain things. We were told that we weren't allowed to learn certain things. We weren't allowed to read. We weren't allowed to write. We weren't allowed to gather. In most situations, we were often shunned from speaking our own language. So there are so many pieces of our history and our identity and our knowledge base that we have lost or lost touch with. And so if we have lost touch with all of these things, then we've also lost touch with the mental state of mind, the psychological values culturally that we had, the values of spirituality have shifted. What all of these things look like then is a person who doesn't know themselves, because they've been given a label at birth with their birth certificate, and they've been labeled since birth with all of these messages from the society that has appreciated slavery and racism and has depreciated the value of people of color as even being human. And so they start with learning about themselves as inferior. They start with going to school, learning about slavery, not learning about their African ancestors and all the things that happen in all of the different countries in Africa, and then all of the tribes within each country, and some of the things that they were known for. We missed all of that. We didn't catch any of that. And so you start off with, you were inferior and racism exists and you fought for freedom and you got a little tiny bit, and we're still fighting today. And so you start off with this platform of lower status in your mind, and then you tend to orient yourself to align yourself with white culture. You look at other Black people like them over there until you find yourself in a position where you are considered one of them, and then it becomes us. And then from there, you either try to cling to white culture or you start to accept yourself as a person of color, as a Black person. And so I think we all go through some level of misorientation where we don't perceive ourselves as other, and where we don't perceive ourselves for how our ancestors saw us. We perceive ourselves as how white people have painted us to be through that miseducation that we've received. And I think a lot of times, even the urge to make a white person comfortable when we're having a conversation about race, like that's what I mean. Like we are so mentally tied into what's acceptable and what's approved by white European culture that we can't even have this conversation without going, ooh, did I make somebody, I hope I say the right words. I hope I make I hope I make it make sense. I hope people don't think I'm coming for them. I hope they don't make me say I'm making them feel guilty. We find ways to attach ourselves to somebody else's culture at our own disadvantage. It's misorientation. And it's menticide, the genocide of our own mentality. We see a lot of that mammyism where we feel like we either have to be the nurturers and have to bear the pain and have to be the strong Black woman, or being over sexualized, and the adultification of our Black girls and our Black boys, where they're being treated as if they're adults and where they're being sexualized at such a young age. But we find it acceptable. We approve of it. We smile and laugh at the Boosie Collins who says that he's pimping out his children, or he's buying prostitutes, or paying women, or having adult women sexualize his children and his nephews. Or when we, ignore other things that are taking place and say, oh, it's okay if this little girl is being dressed into these highly sexual outfits because we sexualize kids. So now that little girl needs to look like she grown. Or we accept the little girls as grown and we start treating them as grown. Like, there's so many levels to this. And then there's that post-traumatic slave syndrome where we have this intergenerational trauma that's built in our cellular memory. So yes, we feel some type of way when we're around certain environments, and we just can't put a finger on why, but just something about this is off. We go through those different scenarios, and that all plays a role in our mentality, and it's stressful. And that stress plays a role into why we see so much anxiety or depression or bipolar or all of these other trauma related disorders that we see high levels of. And then we see the physical aspects of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.